I'm a scientist. I study plants. I study the way plants grow. I study the way they die. I study the way they might grow in a very different world. So we put them in little boxes where we can control everything. We can control the light and the moisture and the mixture of gases that they're growing under. And then we change all those things to be like 200 years from now or 400 million years ago. And then we grow plants and we watch them. And we take videos of them and we count everything they do and we kill them. And then we grind them up and analyze them as many ways we can think about. And we're interested in how they grow, how they might have grown differently, and importantly, how they may grow differently in the future with our changing world. And that has implications for, if you think of all the different things we use plants for, it includes food. Everything you eat either started as a plant or was a plant that was fed to something else that you're eating. Medicine, a lot of our medicines still come from plant extracts. And wood. This place is a great example. If you look around your house or anywhere you go, we build mostly still with wood. And that's a plant. So how those things have changed, have lived on the earth is a big part of what the history of the earth is. And how they will live on planet Earth is a big part of what our lives will be and what our grandchildren's lives will be.
What do you like the most about your work and what do you like the least about your work?
I just enjoy being in the lab. I just like to be there. I think everybody has a place where they feel happy. And for some people, it's the library. A lot of people have told me they love to sit between the stacks and just relax in the library. People say it's the swimming pool. People say it's underneath a maple tree in their grandparents' backyard. I think everybody has that place. And for me, that place is in the laboratory with the lights all lit bright, with my tools in front of me, with things growing, with something happening or might happen or just did happen. It makes me happy. I try to think of a more technical answer for why I love it so much, but I always come back to the fact that it just makes me happy to be there and to be in that room and to have the tools and see plants growing, and that's enough of a reward for most of the days. So when people ask me what I like best about my work, I sometimes feel like I should give a technical answer or something very specific about what we do, and that's the moment when it's all worth it. But I normally have to just admit that it makes me happy. It makes me happy to be in the room where I do the work. And when people ask me what I like least about it, I think it's the same things that annoy most people in the scope of their job. It annoys me when the people I'm trying to do things with don't get along with each other for what I see as silly reasons. It annoys me when there's no money to buy the things that we need to buy to do the work that we need to do. And so instead of worrying about whether I'm doing the work correctly, I'm worrying about how am I going to pay for this. On a more personal note, I have to admit that the work is isolating. It requires a lot of time by yourself in your own head, and it can be very lonely work. I always think that makes me value the time that I get to spend with other people more. And it's also one of the wonderful things about getting recognition for the work that I do. I am so thrilled and grateful to find out that other people flesh and blood people like the idea of me doing this and want to reward me for the times when it goes right. And that feels really, really good. When I think about what's particularly important about Wings, there are many organizations that support endeavors in life. But what's special about Wings is that it's a women's organization. And women are special, and women taking the time to acknowledge other women and reward them and acknowledge them is a beautiful thing. And doing it across disciplines. I mean, it's all the sweeter because it's not people that I've competed with in my small area for many years. It's somebody that lives a different life, that looks at, and it was happy. I'm very glad I did this work, but it was hard. And the sweetness of having somebody notice, and when you work in a male-dominated field, of having other women notice and care and tell you you're good. It's a special thing, and it's a beautiful thing when it comes your way. Well, I am trying to change the world. It sounds like a lot when you say it, but most days I feel like it's pretty doable. And my change is the following. I grew up in a small town. I grew up with my girlfriends around me all the time, from kindergarten through high school. They were my friends, and the first thing we ever thought to do was to tell each other everything. I went to college, and I started to study the sciences, and I didn't have that anymore. And the further I went in science, the fewer and fewer opportunities I had to share that bond. And science requires a lot of hours living in the experiment, living in science. And so I found myself at a place where I was giving everything for this job, really getting a lot out of it. But I had to let go of so much of what I had felt, what had sustained me in my early life as the sisterhood that I took for granted. And I still don't have that in my job. And I'm from the generation that never will. There's just not enough of us. But it doesn't have to be that way. I want to change the world such that the girls you went to kindergarten with are the same girls that you're an engineer with when you're 30. Or they're the same girls that you start up a tech company with when you're 40. And they're the same girls that you sit in the National Academy with and have dinner with the Nobel Prize winners when you're 50. I think that's doable, and maybe I can have something to do with it. Being a Wings scholar and an awardee is a special thing. I think, you know, we go to these exotic places. We do this work that isn't very romantic when you're up to your elbows in, you know, the feces of some animal that you're tracking. And I think it's hard to underestimate the importance of knowing that there's somebody behind me. I'm here as a Wings scholar. I'm here with the support of an organization that believes in me. I think day to day, when you're out there on your own and you don't fit the mold, to know that you're not alone. You know, you're there because people believe in you, and their name and their organization goes with you. it emblazons on your results, and it emblazons on the trip itself. And that turns it into an adventure, not just a trip. What is my greatest accomplishment? I recently had the great joy of publishing a book about my work and about my life. And I've received many letters from readers that found something good in it. And the sweetest ones, I think, are from people who say, I was never any good at science. I never enjoyed science. I thought it was dull, and I had to memorize these equations, and I just never liked it, but I liked your book. I liked what you said about this. And I go for a walk in the woods, and it makes me see things differently. I just can't imagine a greater achievement than to talk to somebody from the heart based on your experience and your work and have them walk away with a different view of the world. I never imagined I would accomplish so much. And every time I hear that, I just am overwhelmed by what a wonderful thing it is. When I think about people who've had the most influence in my life, I think about my father. I lost him recently, and he was 92 years old. And when I was a very little girl, I remember him first. He taught a community college in a rural area, and he taught science. And so he taught all the sciences. And he had a teaching lab, and he had all the demonstrations and the stuff, you know, that you need to show people how magnets work and how pendulums work. And I spent a lot of time there with him, just like the kids that their parents ran the ice cream store. They all learned how to scoop ice cream. So me and my brothers were always in his laboratory. And we always wanted to take out the stuff and play with it, and we didn't know these were, we didn't think of these as school stuff. We thought of them as games. And my father never ever said, no, you can't take it out, or he was just endlessly patient in letting us do this. And it taught us how to get joy from making a machine work or fixing a machine or testing something and finding out the answer. And I was very small, and that's what I wanted to do. I always knew that's what I wanted because of him. And later, when I became a scientist and I ended up in environments where I was an oddball and I didn't fit the mold and all that, I never questioned that I wasn't supposed to be there, that this wasn't the right place for me, because I had that very, very early sense of home from him. When I think about playing in the laboratory with my brothers, and that's what it was to us, play, I do remember a time when it became a surreptitious activity, where it became not something I did in the outside world, where my brothers had shop class and I got stuck in home ec, where my brothers did Boy Scouts and raced cars and set off rockets and all kinds of stuff I would have been great at, but I was stuck in brownies counting the number of forks, you know, and learning how to fold an apron and stuff, which is a good thing to know how to do. But very young, I began to appreciate that this was something secret that my father was letting me do with my brothers. And for better or worse, that made it more precious to me. And I also gained skills. I knew how to fix stuff, I knew how to take care of stuff, and all those skills came back to me in college. So that is why he's an important figure in that he did support me in that, but I don't think he did it in order to treat me the same as my brothers. I think he loved it so much. He just couldn't contain, that the lab was his happy place too. And I was his daughter. Why should he not be there with all of his children? The advice that I always give is hard advice to give, and it's hard advice to hear. But I give it anyway because I think it's the best thing I have to say. I try to tell people to learn to reward yourself. That when you love what you do and something good happens and you do it right, stop and take time to feel how good that feels. Take time to think about how good you are for making that happen, how it wouldn't have happened unless you were there doing that. Take time to take that in, because that's the reward that matters. It's nice when the world rewards you for the good things you've done, and you should be grateful, and you should take time to express that gratitude. But it doesn't always happen, The awards and the medals and the funding and the publicity, it may not come. But the rewards you can give yourself do come if you take the time to cultivate that. The other important thing is that those are the rewards to chase. Don't enter this game to try to get famous or to try to necessarily change the world. The world is going to change how it thinks best. You can put your ideas out there, but what you can go after is that pure reward of knowing that you've done something special and good. And if you always strive for that reward, if that's what you're going for, it'll keep you on the right path. Environmental science is an interesting place to work because the problems and issues facing us are very large. The more we understand how the Earth is changing and what's at risk, there's not a lot of good news to share when we study these problems, which is why they're called problems. We solve problems. I focus a lot on the fact that there's a huge army of talented environmental scientists that care about these things, that work day and night to try to make small progress and big progress on each of these things. When I think about problems that I might be able to contribute to, I think a lot about food. I think what is special about our generation. I think one thing that's special about today is that we have about 7 billion people. We've got 1 billion that go to bed hungry every night, that are living on less than 1,500 calories a day on a good day. And we've got about 1 billion of people that are struggling with serious illness associated with overconsumption. And there's a great irony there. I think making progress on that goes back to what we grow and how we share it. And we have a lot of choices in that. We also have to think about the world changing out from under us. Like in my experiments, the atmosphere is changing, the soils are changing, the water's going different places. All of these things affect. We're trying to feed more people. We're trying to feed people better. And the ground rules are changing at the same time. I'm hopeful about it because in my life I've met so many farmers, and farmers are actually very flexible about what they grow. They want to feed people, and they want to do it right. So I think there's a lot of hearts in the right place. And I think we eat 3 times a day. We make choices. A lot of us eat 3 times a day. And every time you open your mouth, you're choosing what to support and what not to support with the dollar you paid. And so it seems like a very dynamic system to me. And though it's a huge, huge problem, it's the dynamic aspect of it that gives me a lot of hope. if I could make one billboard to say what I'd like everyone to know. It does have to do with food. And I'm not exactly sure what the slogan would be. But it has to do with a calculation I made recently that if we divvied up all the calories that we produce, there would be between 2,000 and 3,000 calories for everybody on the planet every day. That includes 1 billion people that are seriously malnourished. And so somehow on this billboard, I'd like to put that it's not that the earth can't support us all, it's that we haven't figured out how to share. And I would need help from design people and PR people to make that into a good billboard, but that's the idea.